Now that we have a database that can store our list of to-dos, our goal is to let users enter data into this input box on the front end of our app, and then send this data to our to-dos table on the back end of our app where it can be permanently stored. We also want to be able to take our to-dos data out of our back end and display this on the front end of our app in this table. To do this, we need to build a connection that will link the front end of our app to the back end of our app. This connection is built out of two components. The first are the front-end actions that we learned about earlier. We saw that these run in the front end of the app and can be triggered by certain user interaction, such as a user clicking on a button. The second component is the back-end actions that run in the back end of our app. The way we are going to connect the front end to the back end is that when a user triggers a front-end action, say by clicking on a button, there is going to be a special event that we can set inside of the front-end action. This event will then connect the front-end action to a designated back-end action. This creates a sort of tunnel that allows data stored inside of variables to pass from the front end over to the back end. Using variables, data can be passed in both directions, from the front end to the back end, but also from the back end to the front end. Just as on the front end, the back end actions consist of sequences of events that can be used to perform operations on the data that passes through these actions. Let's take a look at this entire process the whole way through. So, if we take, for example, the use case of building a new user sign-up form. So we can set up the app to collect information about our users from the sign-up form on the front end of our app. This will include things like the first name, last name, email, and password. We can then create a front-end action to send the data inside of our app variables to the back-end action whenever the user clicks on this sign up button here. The back-end action that receives the data from the front end passes the data through a sequence of events that will make up the action. For example, we might have a back-end action that has an event to say create a new record in the user's table. Then once this event has finished processing, we could then have a second event that says something like send a welcome email to welcome the new user of the app. The back-end action can then send a message back to the front-end action, for example, a success message, and the front-end action can then take this data and do something like display a success message as an alert pop-up. In Dittofi, you can see examples of the front-end actions inside the Page Builder tab over here. As you've already seen, clicking, for example, the front-end action sign up, brings up details of the action like so. Similarly, you can see examples of back-end actions over here on the back-end actions tab. For example, the sign up forms back-end action is here. Clicking into this action, you can see what this action does. For example, here you can see that this back-end action is creating a new user in the users table, and then directly afterwards logging in a new user. You can build 100% custom front-end and back-end actions within Dittofi by adding new events to the actions to build increasingly complex functionality. For example, if we wanted to say send a welcome email after the user has signed up and signed into the application, we could add a new event to this backend action to say send an email like so. For a complete list of the available options for backend events inside Dittofi and how to configure them, go over to www.docs.dittofi.com, scroll down to the section on the backend, and look under the backend events section. Here you can see the details of how to configure all of the backend events inside of Dittofi. Although Dittofi gives you the option to create 100% custom front-end and back-end actions, for more common functionality, Dittofi has a one-click installation method that allows you to generate actions for specific tables. In the next video, I will show you how to use this one-click installation method to generate front-end and back-end actions for the to-dos table here. The actions that we're going to generate will allow us to get all of the to-dos out of our table and display it in our front end over here. And we will also auto-generate the functionality that will allow users to enter in new to-dos into this input box and then add these new to-dos to the back-end to-dos table over here so that they're stored permanently within our app. So for all this and more, I'll see you in the next lesson.